Washington claims Chinese law will force Huawei to spy for the Chinese government. If you read the text of the law, it may sound bad. But many countries have laws that...
Okay, let's just stop here for a second. The biggest difference between China and Western countries is this building behind me. This is the Swedish Parliament. Fundamental to the rule of law is the principle that a government can only act on powers legally conferred upon it. The Canadian Supreme Court said that the rule of law principle requires that all government action must comply with the law, including the Constitution. Germany's basic law confirms a related concept. It is so important that it cannot be amended. In contrast, the Chinese Communist Party's conception of the rule of law, or Fazi, is a bit different. The party is widely perceived to support rule by law, not rule of law. The party is particularly unwilling to submit itself to legal restraints, and it insists that judicial authorities cannot investigate party members without the party's consent. One of the conditions for becoming a judge is supporting the Chinese Constitution, the leadership of the Communist Party, and the socialist system. The CCP, through People's Committees, also controls the appointment of judges. Consequently, Chinese courts cannot be expected to render judgments contrary to the interests of the government or the party. This is a position endorsed by the man himself. President Xi said, "We must never follow the path of Western constitutionalism, separation of powers, or judicial independence." The law can even come in the form of orders from officials. It is not the form of communication that creates its binding character, but the source and authority of the party giving the direction. In Sweden, as with most other democracies, the law and the legal system exist to constrain the power of the state. In other words, the Prime Minister, down to the lowest government official, can only do what the law empowers them to do. There is also an independent judiciary and other checks and balances that help ensure the government is constrained in its access of power. In China, the law and the legal system exist to enhance and expand the power of the Communist Party. In fact, the party is above the law. With that in mind, let us look at the 2017 National Intelligence Law. As an example, Article 7 says, "Any organization or citizen shall support, assist, and cooperate with the state intelligence work in accordance with the law and keep the secrets of the national intelligence work known to the public." The state protects individuals and organizations that support, assist, and cooperate with national intelligence work. The Chinese National Intelligence Law is extremely broad, applying to Chinese citizens residing outside of China. Article 11 specifies that the law's powers are not limited to Chinese soil. Taken together, these laws empower the PRC government to make extensive affirmative demands on Chinese companies and their officers and employees to advance the CCP's intelligence gathering interests. The law leaves most terms undefined, allowing for the arbitrary interpretations that suit the interests of the CCP. Huawei, of course, has a different interpretation of these laws.
There are no laws in China that obligate us to work with the Chinese government on anything whatsoever. And we have looked at all of the Chinese laws. We have taken on board professors in Chinese law. We've had their views validated via Clifford Chance in London.
Bob Seeley has a different view.
Sam, was that the Clifford Chance report? Was that the report that offered legal advice that then in the small print said that is in no way legally binding? So effectively, yeah. Clifford Chance was completely whitewashing Huawei.
So I would say that a document like that appeared to be nothing but PR because it wasn't really a piece of legal advice.
Huawei contends that the Chinese National Intelligence Law does not permit the Chinese government to compel companies such as Huawei to spy for it, but such a reading is clearly not required by the text, precisely where one might expect such a law to be specific to support a limited reading. Instead, it is vague, and even if Huawei interprets the law in a more narrow fashion, it cannot so bind the Chinese government.
And we absolutely never install backdoors. Even if we were required by Chinese law, we would firmly reject that.
The FCC said any resistance by Huawei to requests for assistance by Chinese intelligence services would likely be futile in light of the Chinese government's authoritarian nature. Indeed, the Chinese law expert on whom Huawei relies in attempting to rebut these allegations concedes that his opinion is provided solely from his own legal perspective and does not take into account political realities. Huawei has also said that it's willing to sign no spy agreements, which to me is laughable given that a court found they breached 3 separate agreements with T-Mobile.